Hi, sweet ones. Here we are, chapter 6. I want you to think about everything that's gone down in this book in 5 chapters. There were, 31 chapters in To Kill a Mockingbird? 300 something pages? This book, if we were actually using the book, has 107 pages in it. Now, that doesn't mean that John Steinbeck is necessarily a better writer than Harper Lee, but it is interesting how something like this, which is called a novella, can encapsulate so much feeling. I mean, you really, by chapter 6, you should be caring about these people. And think about that. How did he do that? How did he make it so that we feel bad for Lenny when he kills Curly's wife? Like he murdered somebody, and yet we're scared for him, right? So that's magical. John Steinbeck, man, he's amazing. Here we go. Chapter 6. The deep green pool of the Salinas River was still in the late afternoon. Already the sun had left the valley to go climbing up the slopes of the Gavilan Mountains, and the hilltops were rosy in the sun. But by the pool, among the mottled sycamores, a pleasant shade had fallen. A water snake glided smoothly up the pool, twisting its periscope head from side to side, and it swam the length of the pool and came to the legs of a motionless heron that stood in the shallows. A silent head and beak glanced down and plucked it out by the head, and the beak swallowed the little snake while its tail waved frantically. A far rush of wind sounded, and a gust drove through the tops of the trees like a wave. The sycamore leaves turned up their silver sides, the brown dry leaves on the ground scudded a few feet, and row on row of tiny wind waves flowed up the pool's green surface. As quickly as it had come, the wind died, and the clearing was quiet again. The heron stood in the shallows, motionless and waiting. Another little water snake swam up the pool, turning its periscope head from side to side. Think about where we are. We're exactly back where this book started. Think about the chapter in Crooks's room, right? It went full circle. Well, so does the novel. We're back where we started in the same setting. Suddenly, Lenny appeared out of the brush, and as he came silently as a creeping bear moves, the heron pounded the air with its wings, jacked itself clear of the water, and flew off down the river. The little snake slid in among the reeds at the pool's side. Usually, I would make you struggle through this, but since I'm talking to a computer and not you, I will just walk you through this. A little water snake with its periscope head came swimming down the little pool, right? And a heron plucked it out of the water and swallowed it whole, killed it instantly. Another little water snake comes down the pool right as Lenny's coming through the brush and scares the heron off, and so that little water snake survives. So of the 2 snakes, one of them lives and one of them doesn't. Lenny came quietly to the pool's edge. He knelt down and drank, barely touching his lips to the water. When a little bird skittered over the dry leaves behind him, his head jerked up and strained toward the sound with eyes and ears until he saw the bird, and he dropped his head and drank again. When he finished, he sat down on the bank with his side to the pool so that he could watch the trail's entrance. He embraced his knees and laid his chin down on his knees. The light climbed out of the valley, and as it went, the tops of the mountains seemed to blaze with increasing brightness. Lenny said softly, "I didn't forget you, goddamn, hide in the brush and wait for George." He pulled his hat down low over his eyes. "George gonna give me hell," he said. "George gonna wish he was alone and not have me bothering him." He turned his head and looked at the bright mountain tops. "I can go right off there and find a cave," he said, and he continued sadly, "Never have no ketchup. But I won't care. If George don't want me, I'll go away. I'll go away." And then, from out of Lenny's head, there came a little fat old woman. Okay, sometimes kids are like, what is happening at this part of the book? Lenny is so stressed out right now. He's having like a breakdown, and his stress is giving him hallucinations. So there is not really a little fat old woman coming out of his head, but he can see her. Nobody else can, but he can. Okay? She wore thick bullseye glasses, and she wore a huge gingham apron with pockets, and she was starched and clean. She stood in front of Lenny and put her hands on her hips, and she frowned disapprovingly at him, and when she spoke, it was in Lenny's voice. I told you, she said. I told you mind George because he's such a nice fella and good to you, but you don't ever take no care, you do bad things. And Lenny answered her, I tried, Aunt Clara, ma'am. I tried and tried. I couldn't help it. You never give a thought to George, she went on in Lenny's voice. He been doing nice things for you all the time. When he got a piece of pie, you always got half or more than half. And if there was any ketchup, why, he give it all to you. I know, said Lenny miserably. I tried, Aunt Clara, ma'am. I tried and tried. She interrupted him. All the time he could have had such a good time if it wasn't for you. He would have took his pay and raised hell in a whorehouse, and he could have sat in the pool room and played snooker, but he got to take care of you. Lenny moaned with grief. I know, Aunt Clara, ma'am. I go right off in the hills and I find a cave, and I live there so I won't be no more trouble to George. You just say that, she said sharply. You're always saying that, and you know, son of a bitchin' well, you ain't never gonna do it. You'll just stick around and stew the bejesus out of George all the time. Lenny said, I might just as well go away, and George ain't gonna let me tend no rabbits now. Aunt Clara was gone, and from out of Lenny's head there came a gigantic rabbit. It sat on its haunches in front of him, and it wiggled its ears, and it crinkled its nose at him, and it spoke in Lenny's voice too. 10 rabbits, it said scornfully. You crazy bastard. You ain't fit to lick the boots of no rabbit. You forget him and let him go hungry, that's what you do, and then what would George think? I would not forget, Lenny said loudly. The hell you would, said the rabbit. You ain't worth a grease jack pin to ram you into hell. Christ knows George done everything he could to jack you out of the sewer, but didn't do no good. If you think George gonna let you 10 rabbits, you're even crazier than usual. He ain't. He's gonna beat the hell out of you with a stick. That's what he's gonna do. Now Lenny retorted belligerently. He ain't neither. George won't do nothing like that. I've knew George since, I forget when, and he ain't never raised his hand to me with a stick. He's nice to me. He ain't gonna be mean. Well, he's sick of you, said the rabbit. He's gonna beat the hell out of you and then go away and leave you. He won't, Lenny cried frantically. He won't do nothing like that. I know George. Me and him travels together. So do you see that these hallucinations are really Lenny's most terrified thoughts coming out, right? But the rabbit repeated softly over and over, he's gonna leave you, you crazy bastard. He's gonna leave you all alone. He's gonna leave you, crazy bastard. Lenny put his hands over his ears. He ain't! I tell you he ain't! And he cried, oh, George, George, George! George came quietly out of the brush, and the rabbit scuttled back into Lenny's brain. George said quietly, what the hell are you yelling about? Okay, pick it up in part 2.